This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we are going to open up this regular session of the Common Council before the City of Port Orford, Tuesday, December 21st at 5:32. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance real quick.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so I'll do a quick roll call. Councilor Rask,
Here.
Councilor Velisis,
Here.
Councilor Burns,
Here.
Councilor Pogwitz,
Here.
Councilor Tidy, and Councilor Webb.
Web here via electronic device.
Thank you. Is everyone except Tidy? Okay, so let's see. We did have through the week there was an addition, and Joseph left, so we do have a presentation from eClampus Vitus. They want to approach us about putting a sign up on the overlook, so that'll be under presentations to the council. And I guess that puts you guys up first. So come on up and I gave you guys. Do you guys have a copy of this?
Yeah.
Okay. Carrie Ann, you got this too.
Yep.
I was a clamper in California.
So I am Darren Ferris. I work at the Port Orford. This is Robert Nunn. This is my humbug of our chapter out of Cave Junction. Umpquajo is the name of our chapter. A tradition of the clampers is to preserve the history of preferably the mining and anything of the 1800 era and the development nowadays. And sorry, I'm a little nervous here. By putting up plaquings, historical markers and everything else, it gives people the chance to see the history of everything. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my Robert. I'm sorry, I got really nervous.
Don't be nervous. You got an easy crowd tonight. That was way easier than a port meeting. Like.
Okay. We've been trying to do this for I think the last 3 years or 4 years. Well, 3, yeah.
Port district and stuff. Now we figured out the city. We're hoping to get permission to set this up at the corner there at Fifth and Oregon Street at the top of the hill, right by the Castaway. Right.
Between the tile and the Castaway?
But further up the hill there, actually, if you go right up the Oregon Street and you stopped right there, there's a sign that says return to 101. There's a nice little flat spot right there. And it's quite the distance away, 60 or 80 yards from, we don't want to be taking anything away from that up there. And the plaque that we're looking at the building from the ground up, it should only be about this high. It'll be on kind of a slope, be like this. And then it'll have the verbiage that's on the paperwork in front of you. I've had that fact checked, and Ron Cook,
Rick
Cook, he found an error in there that it wasn't the Swedish, it's the Norwegian Frogner ship that came in there. So that will be corrected in the plaquing verbiage. It's basically a brick, and this is going to be etched in stone.
Yes.
Base granite, and the words will be etched into it. And
gold lettering, black granite. And we do all the pre-builds for these things at our own home and stuff like that. Set them up there and put them in place, finish the rock trim and everything necessary. And hopefully we'll have the whole town show up for the dedication, which is going to be the 25th, Saturday.
One of the papers you have gives a list of several other plaquings that are around here. Right out here at the Grange, at the Sixes,
Yeah,
we have
I thought that was
a tall, big one there. We just did one at Lexington's Landing a year ago down in Gold Beach.
This is a shorter profile.
And the public is welcome when we have a dedication today. We'll have all the brotherhood will come to town and they'll spend money in the stores and the bars and everything else. And, you know, it's a good positive thing for everybody, I believe.
We're gonna have our outpost chapter, San Bartolo 33 from the Portland area. He's gonna come down with his crew and everything. So hopefully we're gonna have 50, 75, maybe close to 100 people
Wow.
just within our group that come in for the planting, because it's what we do, and there's 100,000 planters out there, all different states, and so it's, well, you know how.
Mhm.
Wow.
With that, this does kind of make it into a little bit of a timing issue for us to get into this in May. We're trying to set up with Edson Creek up there for the camping arrangements for this many gentlemen coming in. And we'll be, you know, having our festivities as clampers have known to do. Up there way up in the hills, away from anybody's eyes. But with that, we respectfully ask your permission to follow ahead with this little plan. Is there any questions?
I make a motion to approve this project. I really love these. They tell us stories about different cool places.
We should probably, and I'm not trying to stop your motion,
We
but we
probably
should
should go over to planning, shouldn't it?
put it on the
Planning
agenda,
or
have a
Okay, so-
discussion
right,
about it.
Right.
So if you want to,
We do just a consensus then for,
yeah, is everybody okay with moving that to item 8B?
Yeah, I think that this
We're not, but this is so we can talk, we'll talk about it at that. But we shouldn't be talking about it unless it's on the agenda. So is everybody good with that?
Mhm.
Okay, here none. Thank you, guys. It's just a process now. I'm not trying to hold you up. We'll let you know the answer here. Well, it looks like what, an hour? If we're doing good. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I know where you work, Darren, so I'll get back to you if you don't want to. Okay, so that moves us into item number 3, the consent calendar, which all that has on it right now is the appointments to the Emergency Management Commission that was formed. There's no minutes, there's no financials. I have looked at all of these applications, and they look good. Most of them have been serving.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Okay, can I get a second on that?
Second.
Okay, so
Oh, and I want to make it clear that Clark is not on it because he's out of district. And then I provided Harry's application that wasn't in the packet,
okay, but gotcha.
but he is on the edge, on the consent calendar.
Okay, so BW first did that, and then Rick Perry seconded. Okay, any discussion on that? I'll call for the vote. Tim Pogwitz,
Tim, yes.
Ann Velisis,
And yes.
Perry Rask,
Yes.
Gary Burns,
Yes.
Brett Webb.
Webb, yes.
Okay. Consent calendar passes. Additions to the agenda. We did just add the clampers, and then also for 8C, we need to add, we had talked a few months ago about having an interim judge to replace Gary Milliman. Things have changed to where Gary can do most of the load, but we do need to accept, well, we don't need to, we need to consider passing this resolution so that we can have a substitute judge, and that will authorize them to be able to do their job. It needs to be done by resolution. And it is kind of a last minute thing, but it has changed because it is only for a substitute that has been recommended by Gary. So that's going to be item 8C. We already added clamper. Was there anything else we needed to add?
I would propose that we also just take the budget update off the agenda tonight, just because we didn't get quite all the information.
Okay, yeah, and we don't want to have a convoluted conversation on that. And I will hit up something for the parks report, but okay, so we're going to go ahead and strike 7A from the agenda.
And then I'm wondering about the burn permit. Do we want to have
Oh,
any
yeah.
discussion on that?
Yes,
Good.
we do for sure. And that will be, is that old business or new business? It's kind of, it wasn't on the agenda, so we'll call it new business 7D, 8D, excuse me. And that'll be the Burn to Learn
Burn to learn.
application. Okay. Moving on. Citizen concerns. I don't know if we had a list back there, so please come on up if you have a concern about an agenda item. Is there anyone online with a citizen concern pertaining to the agenda? All right. Hearing none, we will go on to departmental reports. And that starts with administration, so that's going to be kind of a light report. We've been limping along, trying to plug the gaps. Ann's really been diligent on keeping the dredging permit going and doing the job search and getting the applications out and many, many other things. Kind of nuts and bolts stuff for me. Uh, but we are plugging along, and we will have an update on that, for 7B, the update on the positions, which is a big one for us. We are close to getting an attorney on board. We still have to do a full RFP, but we do have a stopgap with local government law group, and we're also talking with them about a little labor help as well, because that's a way to maybe we know what we've been up against with League of Oregon Cities Council, so we're just kind of making sure we have all of our options open.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me, I wonder if it wouldn't be prudent to advertise for a couple of the positions that seem to be in peril, and perhaps stack up or attempt to stack up some applicants that might be, you know, useful to the city in the event of anything strange happening. Just given the turmoil, it would seem wise to have someone on the bench, or at least have applications on the bench.
Noted. We can do that. Any admin questions? I'm sure there's a ton. What else we got? The brick grant, we're wrapping that up tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I guess I can give an update on that. Yeah, we are continuing to work on the brick grant, and I'm going to be meeting with Tina, the engineer with Civil West, tomorrow morning, and the Oregon Emergency Management person to just go over some of the details. She's starting to refine it, and we're going to work on it. It's due at the end of January, so there's a lot of details to pull together, but it really is great to have her on board because she's, looking at the deficiencies and trying to figure it out. So that's going to be moving forward.
Mhm.
Excellent.
And then moving into the finance report and taking that off the agenda today, I hate this word, but it's looking like we might have to workshop, just have a budget session, to have an in-depth conversation about it and not convolute it with the rest of the meeting. Just as moving forward, because with the being short staffed, we might have to break out a committee or someone to start looking at, these things. And so someone's just not cold calling us when we get the admin. Public Works, John, are you online? I do not see John Isidore online. That's weird. He said he was going to show up online. John Isidore.
Hey, Pat, I'm here.
All right. Good deal.
Sorry about
What do you
that.
got for us? Or do we have any questions for John on his? All righty, John, lay it on us. You got any big fish to fry?
No, not really. We're holding our own. Had a few leaks, as you know. Uh, just following the procedures and moving forward and keeping the plant running. So everything's good for now.
Okay. How'd the sludge pond, how's that going at the plant
That's
or
going well. I think we've had about 8 trips out of it so far. They weren't able to get there today, but they're taking about 6,000 gallons a draw. So Mr. Hurd's working with us, and that's progressing. We're going to hit our goal of 95-ish K. And then come July 1st, next budget year, we should be able to wrap up the last portion of that.
Nice.
That would be so nice to have done.
That's great. Thank you, John.
Yep, you're welcome. Oh, also, I'll mention real quick, had a conversation with Dick last time he was up. It sounds like he may be a viable candidate to help with the dredging of the pond with his suction trucks. And he's also going to come by. We're going to do a site visit at Hubbard's, and then we're going to come down to the Decant Pond where we do our backwashes. And he thinks he can take the backwash stuff pretty quickly with 2 or 3 trucks. That pond hasn't been done. I don't know how long it's been. It's been at least 15 years since they've done anything with the backwash pond. So that material passed all of its testing and can go right out to land application. So he's going to give us a quote for doing the backwash pond. It's approximately 8 or 9 feet deep, and it's about 5 or 6 feet full of sediment. So 2 or 3 trips, and he should be able to take all that material with a little bit of cleanup by Public Works to take care of the grass and the vegetation that's growing in it. So I'm waiting on a quote on that. Next time he's up, we'll go through that, and then we'll go to Hubbard's and we'll see if we can get some sort of a quote for what he can do at Hubbard's for us. So we may have another avenue for dredging on Hubbard's.
Okay.
That's great news. So when you get that, definitely let me know, or let us all know, because we're going to be working. We've got a grant going to figure out how to raise money for doing the dredging. So that would be helpful to have that info.
Yeah, absolutely. And I need to talk to Tina to make sure it fits into that whole profile of the dredging permit that we submitted. So I think it will, but it won't be out of water work. So may be a quicker avenue for us to get through that portion.
Terrific.
Were we going to try to do the dredging in one shot, or is that going to be multiple years? Is there?
It won't be multiple years, but it'll be multiple days, and that has to be worked out because of the in-water work time frame of I believe, don't hold me to this, but I thought it was July 31st through October, which, as you know, is our dry months. So that may become an issue just because of the stirring up of the pond and how many days we'll be down for runtime.
I know that's what the engineers are trying to figure out, is what do we do in the meantime for our water supply and all that kind of stuff. It's a big.
Yep, that's right. It's a conversation to be had for sure. Other than that, that's about what I have.
Okay. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Okay, please. Any questions for Hank? Anything special to report to us, Hank? Yeah, we got it. Any questions for Hank? All right, planning. Joseph is not here and Crystal is not here. I did not hear of any red flags or anything out of the ordinary this month for planning. Mayor's report, I kind of touched on it with the admin. Did you want to read this, Ann? You want me to read it?
That's under, we have a 7C.
7C. Okay. Well, then we'll just carry that over till then. Liaison reports. We'll start with Port. Councilor Webb.
Yeah, hi. So the crab season started off well, and it doesn't look like a whole bunch of crab around, but the price is decent, and the guys are productive, and things are looking good for the season generally. But I guess the big news would be the boring that occurred for samples, the core samples for the train replacement project. Those boring samples were taken yesterday, and they got them done. And I don't know, Pat, you might know a little more about that beyond what I know, but that's,
I know that they
that's
didn't
exciting
find
news.
anything that they weren't expecting.
Right. So, yeah,
They didn't
so that's
find
good.
any big soft
No
spots. So
surprises.
yeah, it was good.
That's about all I got there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Webb. School.
Nothing. Can you tell me what it is I'm supposed to be doing with them?
Kind of just reporting any big fires, or if they have anything they need to come to the city, or just kind of reporting the high notes of them. It's basically because the school is such an important entity, we want to make sure that there is a liaison for when things do arise. There's been quite a few months where we don't get a real hot and heavy school report, but it's important that we have the liaison there for when we need
It
it.
might be good just to meet with Aaron once a month, maybe.
Yeah, and I have met with them once, but
Yeah, you can liaise however you'd like, just as
Yeah.
long as we get
But that might be
the
a
high
connection
points.
you would develop over time and then get some.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, this is a big one. Councilor Tidy is not present, but for the fire district, but we will be hitting up on 8D. So I guess we can just save that.
We
I
went to
mean,
the meeting, the
right.
board meeting, and it went real well.
Gotcha. And they went to the board meeting to discuss what we discussed about Burning Learn last year. Was there anything outside that Greg would report other than what we're going to be talking about later? Okay. So we'll move on. Watershed, Belisis, 13. I don't know why it says 13. Why do you have a 13 in parentheses by your name?
I don't know.
Page 13.
Oh,
Oh,
There we
thank you.
go. Thank you. Yeah, so the
There's no
very good
13.
news is just this week, I finally submitted all of the paperwork for that DEQ loan. It's been like pulling hair to get it all pulled together and get everything done. And I sent it in and they said, yeah, we're all on vacation. So we'll talk to you in the new year. But still, it felt very good to get it done. We're going to have to extend the contract to buy the land for another month, but hopefully at the end of January, we will execute the final transaction and be done with that project, which has been going on for a long time. So that's very good. And then secondly, just briefly, we submitted a watershed grant in early September, which is oriented towards reducing sediment in the upstream of our reservoir, because that's one of our problems. The sediments flow down and fill up our reservoir and reduce our storage capacity. So in addition to dredging, we got to think about what can we do upstream. And so one of the projects is to remove a failing culvert, and another project is to look at putting in some sediment abatement structures that could help collect sediment before it gets into the reservoir. So that's a planning grant to help us figure out how to do that. And then we'd have to go back and get an implementation grant. The team that worked on that, if you recall, we got a grant to help us with grant writers, was so enthusiastic. They found another grant and they said, hey, we can just plug all this information into the second application, and they're working on that, and we're going to submit that tomorrow. So we'll have 2 chances to try to get some work on that. So that's good news too.
Awesome.
Parks. Tidy's not here, but we will be, well, no, this is when I would touch on that. So last month this budget conversation partly came up because of the money for the playground equipment. And because of, we're having this, getting the bearings on our finances and going over everything with a fine tooth comb, that money was a concern. So Ann talked with Dave, and it sounds like we will be able to expend the funds for the playground equipment if that's what the decision is. But in talking with Greg and Parks, they are circling back and exploring grants a little bit, because we already kind of missed our window on that certified wage thing. There was a timeline to try to beat the up in wages, but we missed that window. So I think we have a little bit of room. One of the grants is coming up in February, so the turnaround won't be that bad. But I just thought it was important at this meeting to convey that the playground equipment isn't in jeopardy as much as it might have been. Things get
Is this about
regurgitated.
the 44,000?
No,
45, yeah.
it's about the 95,000, which was, if you recall, moved from the general budget, general fund into parks, and it's not necessary to buy the playground, basically, is the bottom line. And we can go back and when we have a larger budget discussion, look at things and probably bring that back into the general fund.
But things are not as dire on the playground equipment was the main objective of that story, and they are looking for grant funding too. So theoretically, we should be okay on the playground equipment, and we just need to hope that we get the grant funding for it, and that gets put together. So
We've got a volunteer group that might be helping with the A-frame decking that needs to be redone. There was
when
there was
what
a notice at Facebook that Parks was looking for a contractor to come in and rebuild the deck, I guess.
gotcha.
And somebody came to me and said they might volunteer to do that.
Good, because I don't. I mean, I don't know what the parks budget is, but is
No, I
that
don't
something
think there's
outside
any-
of
yeah.
their, I remember hearing about the roofs and stuff, but I don't
Yeah,
remember
I
the
think
A-frame deck. So
There's something in there, but because I was just looking at it to try to get to the bottom of that. But just to clarify, if something's in the budget, they don't have to come back to council and say we want to spend this, or do they? That's like, I'm still trying to get a grip on this. If we've budgeted it, do they still have to come back and say this is what we're proposing?
well, I mean, just the functional, do we have the money in the bank part of it, or the due diligence? But if it's budgeted, they can, I mean, unless it's like the playground equipment or outside of the budget, but that's another thing. You
Approving
still
a
have to
grant,
accept the
approving a
proposals.
bid maybe, or
Yeah, exactly.
Because I would think we have to make sure that, and this is a little bit tricky at this moment since we are in between, don't have an administrator, we have to make sure that whatever happens is done properly.
Right.
And so. Anyway.
Which is there's either it's no cost to the city or we get our bids if it's over that amount. So yes, the bid process and accepting the bids is where the city council would get the final say, even though it was budgeted.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Parks could get the bids organized.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's the whole committee reason is do all the heavy lifting, give us your recommendation, but ultimately all that does rest on the council. All the committees are just advisory committees or recommend. Can't get the right angle on recommendation. Recommendary.
Advisory.
Committees. Advisory committees. Yeah, but okay. Main Street.
They haven't been doing too much other than keeping the visitor center open, and there's a few more bike racks to put up. And they did a tea at the Hughes House that was very successful. And the Hughes House is all done up for Christmas, and they've got it open for people to come and check it out. That's it.
Okay. Emergency management.
And they're going to be meeting next Thursday. So
Good. And then end-to-end. Anything in there?
They're still trying to gather information from other small cities, and the urgency seems to have passed. Everybody has dispersed, and we really haven't had any feedback. I mean, there's been no complaints filed or anything that I'm aware of. But the committee is still investigating ways to provide assistance to them. That's about it.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you everyone for the liaison reports. We'll move on to old business 7B, and that will be an update on the open positions. So I will let the head of the hiring committee go ahead and update us.
Yeah. So I just wanted to give an update on our position. So we put out ads and postings in quite a few places at the beginning of December. We did basically all of the professional organizations, the Oregon Cities and Counties Managers Association, League of Oregon Cities. We did Washington League of Cities. We did Oregon Planners Institute. We did this thing called Recruitology, which is supposed to be a bigger kind of thing, like more like an Indeed. And I also called the schools. The University of Oregon has a public administration program, and so does PSU, and asked them to put it out if they had like an alumni network for people who are in public administration. And they were happy to get it and said they'd put it out. So that's cool. So far, we have had a little bit of interest, but to keep the process clean and fair, we're not going to really look at applicants, or I'm responding to applicants who write or have questions, but we're not going to look at it until early January. However, I recently had and this is the most important thing I want to talk about. I recently was able to have a conversation with Gary Milliman, and he had posted our ad online. And he said, I have some feedback for you, which is that he said the amount of money that we had decided upon, that people were kind of almost joking about it and saying it's not enough. And for the job that we're asking for, which is the chief executive, that's also the finance person. So if we wanted to, he said, if we want to attract a candidate with the qualifications that he recommends, that we boost it up a little bit to 80,000 to 110,000, which is what, if you recall, what our interim city administrator had recommended to begin with. And then we kind of brought it down. So Gary strongly recommended that. He said that if we want to attract somebody of the caliber that has that, that would be what he would recommend. And we also will likely at this point have to extend it into February. So I guess I just wanted to, that's what I would recommend that we do. It doesn't mean that we're going to pay that top wage, but if somebody comes in and is really good, I think it could be a very worthwhile investment for our city. So anyway, that's what I need actually feedback on for you guys, because I think we're going to have to make the decision of the hiring committee in early January to put it back out because of the holidays, especially if we don't get enough applicants. We might have to raise it, and that's based on the feedback I got. I think that's a good idea.
It makes sense to me.
Can we just raise the top end? I mean, do we have to raise the bottom as well? Can we just go to 120, 70 to 120?
I suppose we could do that. I guess the idea, he suggested raising it up. It's almost as if it was suggested that the range made you think that you're going to start at the low end and go up. So maybe there's a way the way I had it in the ad was the range depending on experience. So I don't.
Well, and that's the nice thing about the process is we do have our probationary period, so we'll never have to pay anyone the top end to start off. They'll have their 3 months and then their 6 month evaluation. So we'll have a little, we'll be able to get into the next budget cycle with that anyways.
And we will be interviewing the people and understanding who they are and seeing what they have to offer,
I think
Can we just, can I,
recommendation.
sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Brett.
I was going to move to accept Gary's recommendation and in one fell swoop here, extend the application opening period until the February date that Ann sees fit.
Yeah, I didn't actually say a specific date, but I wanted to ask you about that too. I mean, one of the things that we found is that the job ads are like for 30 days, so if we repost it on the current ads go to, like January 5th, if we repost it right around then, we could go to February 5th. I don't know if you guys think if people feel good about that. And then, I mean, if, we'll be up against it if we still don't get applicants and we want to keep it open longer, we can do it again. But I think we'll get some decent applicants by that time, I hope.
That sounds reasonable.
Trying to think of a motion that would authorize you or the hiring committee to do those extensions, so we didn't have to necessarily come back. I'm not saying open until filled, but just to give you a little more wiggle room to say, oh, we haven't gotten anybody. Do I need to ask you guys if we should extend it or not?
Right, I
Well,
agree.
we can, we'll be coming back in January, and so we will have,
That'll be the third week in January.
yeah, so we might,
Yeah,
right now,
that
we're not going
ends
to
the
know
fifth,
if
doesn't it?
people might do it at the last minute,
But with Brett's motion, that would extend us till February. So that would, Brett's motion would cover everything if he got a second.
And Brett was thinking 80 to 120, I think.
He said he was to accept Gary Milliman's recommendation and authorize the extension to February 5th, I believe.
80 to 110, right?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay, can
I'll
I get a
second that
second?
motion.
All right. Sorry, Joseph, my handwriting is horrible. I have to redictate this. Okay, any discussion on that? I will call for the vote. Counselor Burns,
Yes.
Counselor Velisis,
yes.
Counselor Rask,
Yes.
Counselor Pogwitz.
Yes.
Oh, we got, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Moving on.
Webb,
Thank you,
yeah.
Ann.
Webb, yeah.
Oh, see? Yeah, Counselor Webb. Is that what you were saying, Webb
Yes.
for? Thanks, Brett.
Yeah.
So the next position, I'll mention another position and then you can decide. The other position that we've had open, which is a really good thing, is that we thought we were going to have Judge Milliman was leaving us. And he is actually going to go move away from here and take a job as the city administrator in Talent because he wants to move over to the Valley. But he's such a dedicated judge. He has arranged his schedule to have one day off a week so he can come back and be the judge for our coastal communities, Brookings, Port Orford, and Bandon, if we can change the date. So we are going to change our court date to accommodate his schedule. All three cities will be kind of lined up so he can come and be our judge. So that is a really great news on that, I think, because he is a judge that I always hear very good things about. Pat, do you want to say anything about the interim position or that we're working on that or
As far,
for the city administrator?
oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, we skipped. We have gotten some leads. Well, I mean, how do we want to approach that?
Well, I'm still unclear from you about is that your purview entirely that you can just hire the interim administrator if we find the person to do it versus is it something that has to come to council? The last time, you hired Gary Milliman and it worked, and then Gary helped us hire the other interim administrator, and that I don't think the council ever voted on it. I think it was like we just kind of
Right.
couple
No,
of
we
us met
we
with
didn't.
him.
And I don't even know if that first process was right with Gary, but I think it was because the pro tem angle of it is what opens it up. It's when you hire someone and going through that hiring process. So technically, I think I could hire, but it's just a little bit of a gray area. Do you have any insight on that? Because I'm not the administrator. I don't do the.
We can just
I
go
don't
ahead and make a motion to make it clean.
Yeah, we can make a motion to give you the authority to do that.
Well, but then you're doing wages and everything along with that. So I would say that comes back to council.
Mhm.
Right.
One of the discussions that I had with
I would. Oh, sorry, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
one of the discussions I had with Pat about that is, well, what did we do before? What was the wage we promised the previous interim administrator? What was the wage we did with Mr. Milliman when he was our interim? Mr. Milliman, we did an hourly wage, apparently. And then Mr. Huddle, we did a particular wage that was, so, just to have a ballpark, because if Pat is calling people, we need to know what are we talking about here? So, because sometimes you have to make
I
the
think-
call.
Go ahead, Brett.
I think I think we're required to look at any contract, the council's tasked with accepting contracts. And I believe that in our policies handbook somewhere, that's always kind of the way that we've done it. Because there's no real responsible party. If something goes wrong, then, you know, if I was Pat, I would not want that responsibility. I would not want that responsibility. I would want to be instructed by the council because he is a supervisor, but he, you know, isn't really in charge of that. So I think that the council is required historically by our policy to approve contracts. That's it. That's what I got. Okay.
Okay, so basically that boils down to me is as soon as we get some candidates, we might have to have a quick meeting to address it. And I think that's probably the best way to go about it. I know it makes me feel more comfortable.
I think that sounds
Put it
good.
on you guys than
In
me.
early January could be a good time to do that if we can nail
Okay.
that.
Yeah, and like I say, I mean, there are some conversations going on, so I'll circle back on that after
So you
Christmas.
can like make a recommendation though, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you don't have to bring all the options to council, right? You can make a recommendation of those that you've gone through, that you've interviewed, talked to, whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like they're stacking up to where I wouldn't want to mention something, you know, or cut anybody out.
Well,
But,
I personally would like to see all the options that I have.
mhm.
How could I reject a recommendation if I don't have an option? It's just not. It doesn't seem. I want to see a stack of applications. That's me. That's just me. But okay.
Okay, no, we're good. I got clear direction on that. I know we're everybody's. We got a plan. Now we just need shoes to fill the plan.
And now the other thing you mentioned a little bit about the city attorney position.
Mhm.
And maybe we could just get a little clarification about that too, because at one point, I think, Shayla, you said it was like a thing where you put out an RFP
You do.
but then there's this law firm that it sounds like cities are now using, local government law firm. So can
They
you
are,
maybe
but I
tell
think
us?
that they've probably set out RFPs and then that law firm has responded to those RFPs.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So we know that
Other-
you're going to be with us, but could you give us some guidance or a sample, or maybe you guys have already talked about how to do that?
I can give you a sample.
Okay.
Yeah, I can
And
provide
some
that.
recommendation about how we do it, because I know
Sure.
Pat started some conversations, but if we have to do that official thing,
Sure.
be good to do.
Yep.
Terrific.
Is
So
that a
what was
request for qualifications, or is it for proposals or qualifications, or what is that for? Would it be for qualifications or for proposals?
It's usually a request for proposal, and then the law firms will submit, their experience and their hourly rates and things like that, and you'll get to make your selection.
So we say, oh, we are we are seeking an attorney who can do these X, Y, and Z for us.
Yes, and normally within that, you will want to set out what your expectations are in regards to meeting attendance, whether you want somebody to attend remotely, whether you expect them in person. You need to figure out what it is you're willing to accept. And cost certainly plays a role there because I think that the local government firm is out of Eugene.
Mhm.
And so, cost wise, to have an attorney come down, it may not be worth it. It might be better to have them appear by Zoom and not be an in-person.
Would there be
Thanks.
it doesn't seem like there'd be a reason why that wouldn't be a good alternative.
It's purely up to the preference of the council.
But I mean, can you think of one being better than the other?
Nope. I think it's going to be, honestly, I think it's going to be a bit difficult to
Even
source.
find somebody to.
There are a few that I know of who are representing cities. I think that the city attorney for Coquille is out of Coos Bay. But that's really the only one that I am aware of because I feel like a lot of people who practice in that realm have retired. And nobody has replaced them, unfortunately.
And if it was somebody from Coos, even it'd be 2 hours
Yeah.
Yeah.
just to be.
We've been
really
spoiled by having you, Sheila. As
Yeah, we
our local person.
appreciated you.
I'll just mention, and we can talk about this another time, but in that conversation with Gary, he mentioned that the city of Brookings had been working with one of these firms, and one of the attorneys there at this local government law firm, was coming to the meetings virtually, and that it was working out well. So
Good.
that's an example. We know they've probably had some legal issues lately, so.
Well, we know they did it for 2 years during COVID too, so people are practiced. All right. So now we'll move on to 7C, hit up some of the
Hey,
goals
Pat,
and accomplishments.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Pat, can I? Yeah, I just wanted to interrupt for a second while we were on that topic. I was hoping we could just take this moment to thank Shayla officially for her dedication to the community of Port Orford for all these years. Is it appropriate at
Absolutely.
this time?
Well, if we're going to do that right now, hold on a second.
I'll fill in and just say, yeah, I think we really have come to, we didn't realize how special it was to have an attorney who's local, who could show up and come to all of our meetings and be here and get to know our community so well, or not get to know, just know our community so well from the get-go. And that's probably a hugely rare thing for any town. So thank you
Yes.
so much
Well,
for that.
Thank you for tolerating me all these years.
Thank you, Shayla.
I have been, well, I don't actually even know. I have been an attorney for 18 years, and I feel like I was only a couple years out of law school when I jumped in here.
Wow.
So it's been a while.
Wow.
This is what you got.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you.
You guys are awfully nice. I'm going to miss all of you, but I'm sure that I will see everyone in the grocery store.
We may have to call you now and then just in case. I think Pat has you on speed dial right now,
Yes,
so
and that's fine.
Yeah.
we really appreciate your
Thank you.
service.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Thank you all.
as a city councilor, I've come to know like the work that you do as a municipal attorney is really important to us. So thank you.
Critically. Thank you, Tim.
Yes, thank you, Pat.
Okay, 7C. Lay it on us, Ann.
Okay, yeah. So, here at the end of the year, I'd thought it would be a really good thing to just do a little year-end review and update for us. I sent it out to all of you via Joseph, but he was gone this week. So hopefully you got it. I sent it out at the last minute again today. But I feel like we've really accomplished a lot of things this year. Of course, we didn't accomplish everything we set out to, but putting it all on this sheet to see what we did and didn't do, I'll just mention a few highlights. We have made progress on the dredging permit in a way that it was just not happening. So I feel really good about that. And also on that land acquisition, it's almost done. So those are two really big and important things for our water system that are going to be great. We still have to do the meter work and tracer study and all sorts of other things, but those are two big accomplishments. The other really big accomplishments or things I feel really good about is that we got a functional website. We finally fixed the city sound system thanks to Greg Tidy primarily and that getting that sound guy in. We have been, except maybe very recently, been providing for timely minutes and agendas. That was such a problem for so long, but with our new recorder, Joseph, it's been going really well. So, and yet, there's a few more little things to fix, like fixing council emails and stuff. I won't go through all of this, but some other things that we did, we passed the police levy, and we have really increased our grant capacity this year. We've applied for grants for the community building renovation, for road repair, for planning for housing in the future, in those sediment risk reduction things. And so far we've received a number of grants for the land acquisition, for the community building renovation, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and for planning. So the only one we haven't gotten so far is the road repair. So, and we have the brick grant. We're still working on ensuring full staffing. That's feels like it's going a little bit in the wrong direction, but it's in progress. And for housing, we passed the STR code. That was another thing that was going on in a long time. And now we get to implement it. We need to get going on that. But anyway, I think it's just good to take stock and see that we set out these goals. We did a lot of it, not everything, but hopefully next year we can set some new goals. And when we get the new administrator, that person can help us work toward them.
Thank you for doing this. This
Thanks,
is really
Ann.
good
That's
to
a
look
really,
at.
really cool.
You're welcome.
All right.
So can I ask a question on this? So we got the grant for planning?
We got a grant for planning, yes. And that is going to be, I don't remember the details of it right at the moment. I'd have to look it up again, but it's about housing.
Mhm.
So, there's this effort in the state now to do changing some housing codes so that there's more possibility to do affordable housing.
Right.
So that's what it's about. It's about doing some of those things for our community.
The ADUs and
Right.
ADUs,
And
cluster
so
housing.
we would be hiring the planner to do that.
Crystal would do it.
Right.
She's basically the person who
Right.
helped us write the grant. She'd be working with the planning commission to do those pieces, and then eventually it'll come to us.
Right.
So, they have to look at our code, look at the state model code, or, but
Right.
that's a process that I think is going to happen.
Thank you.
Which the grant's really good because to have these conversations about zoning and stuff like this, like it was cumbersome for the city to try to pay for it. Like we've wanted to do things in this direction for years. So it's super awesome.
Yeah. And I think, one other thing just to reflect on is getting in the practice of applying for grants, figuring out how we do it. It's a little bit hard right now because we don't have an administrator, but we kind of fell out of the habit of doing that. And we do need to do that if we want to do the things that our community wants to do. We know we have a lot of citizens that want all sorts of services and cool things and great things. And it's hard. We don't have the money to do it. So we need to make these things happen. So I think we're working on it. And that leads to the next thing. Can we just go right into and if there's no other questions?
Yeah, new business 8A.
This is the official announcement. Some of you, we sent it around to council, but I'm really excited to tell everybody that the city received a $1.5 million community block grant to renovate our community building. And that's hugely exciting news. It's like a Christmas present for our city. We just heard about it like last week. And the great news about this is that, this builds on this tremendous work that the citizens group, which is called the Port Orford Community Building Fundraising Committee, started. John's here tonight, but it's a group of great citizens who had the vision of figuring out how to renovate the building, better tie it together with the Legion Hall. And they did some preliminary work that enabled us to apply for the grant. And we applied with the help of CCD. And so just a few other things about this. We're going to have 24 months to do it from once we sign the contract. And the good news is that CCD, the Coos Curry Development Corporation, they helped us to write the grant and they wrote themselves in to be the grant administrator. So that means they can really help us do much of what needs to get done. And there's sort of a problem in rural communities of failure with these kinds of grants because cities don't have capacity to cross the T's and dot the I's. And that's trouble we were getting into a couple years ago where we just weren't following through on things we promised with and people weren't getting paid. And we kind of got in trouble with Business Oregon because we were flubbing it up, So having Lehigh at CCD help us and, we're just going to stay on top of it. If we can do a good job at this, it will help us to maybe work towards other grants in the future. So there'll be stuff we'll have to do as a city council, probably some resolutions to pass and getting some ducks in a row. But I think it's a really exciting thing. And then the last thing I'll say too is we're going to put out a press release next week about this. And it sounds like a lot of money, but it's not all the money. The community, John and the committee have already raised a lot of money, but there's going to be more money that needs to get raised to cover the cost. So it's going to be an ongoing project, and hopefully we can get people excited about it again.
How
So-
much did we ask for?
And
1.5.
I'm raising my
Yeah.
hand here.
Hold on one second,
Let me
Brett.
get-
Perry had a question.
Yeah, Perry,
yeah,
we
go ahead.
it asked for the maximum amount for this grant is 1.5. Yeah.
And the
there's-
match is,
There's a match. I forget what it is. Okay, Brett. Yeah.
Yeah, so I imagine it's 80% match or 90%, the grant's probably 80 or 90%, but can we use that as that 1.5 as leverage? Is it federal money? Can we chase federal money with its pass-through type? I just, we always talk about that, and 1.5 million is a lot of dollars, but 1.5 is 10% of 11 million. And if we have 2 years to spend it, well, it would be kind of cool to just build a whole giant brand new building. I don't know if that's something that you guys have discussed, but using that as a match, using that 1.5 as a match against some other potential funding sources should be investigated if you haven't. Just some
Well, I
thoughts
think
there.
the thing is that committee, which includes also, I feel like our town's most heralded and famous fundraiser, who's Toby Porter, is planning to work with the committee to raise the funds from other sources, and the committee is going to work. I mean, that's what the committee is set up to do, and we couldn't do it without their help because the city doesn't have capacity to do that. But we may have to work with them to apply for other grants, certainly, and there'll be more information
that was
on that.
he was talking
that was my question.
about the match. He was talking about using the state funded, the 1.5, and looking for a federal funding pool of more money. And then, because you can use that 1.5, that state money, a lot of times you can leverage federal money with that to where
It
that
is
1.5 would be
But
a match. Oh, it is
Community
federal.
Block Grant is federal. It's HUD funding. It's federal funding. Is my understanding.
So
Well,
could we
then that-
look at state money?
Federal leverage state. Anyway.
Mhm. I don't know. Can you use federal
We
money?
can't
Yeah.
use federal to leverage state.
But I'm sure,
Sometimes.
John is here in the audience and can bring that discussion to the fundraising committee. And I think we'll have to there will be the need for everybody to look at the application and figure it out. But that they're going to have to be key players in it because of the capacity of the city issues. But just in general, kind of as an overview of the schedule, this coming year is probably going to be a lot of planning, preparation, permitting, procurement, all that kind of stuff. And then the next year would be when the actual stuff would happen. Probably. That's just a general paint stroke. So.
I might suggest that the committee thinks that the Fort Henry Foundation might be up to about 1.8, 1.5. The total budget was around 2 million to exercise what Joe Slack came up with. And so that's probably where we would start, is trying to get that kind of money. Any other money that government money, I think, would have to come through the city.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Mayor, could you relay what that person said? I could not hear.
Sure. That was John Johnston, and he John, will you come up and say that again?
John's on the committee.
Is this on?
You should be.
Sorry. What we've talked about is trying to get around 400,000 to add to the 1.5 plus the 120,000 that we actually have in the bank today. the whole project was in the neighborhood of about 2 million. It started out at about 1.4 million, but that is like 3 years old now, or not longer. Well before or well after Perry, you were involved with this for a while. So I think Toby and I want to have a meeting with our committee first or second week of January to kind of get our act together and who's doing what and when. And that should be coordinated, as I see it, with the city so they know. But if there's money out there like the Ford Family Foundation, we want to jump on that timing and make sure we know what it is. But I think we need to get up to close to $2 million. And you can't do anything as far as procurements until you get construction documents. And those have not been created. And I know Joe Slack, the architect, has been very, very busy. So the sooner we could figure out a way to get him under contract to do the construction documents, I think that'd be a good place to start.
Yeah, and I think we can have that meeting with Lehigh in early January and come up with a blueprint for how we work that.
Probably have to RFP that one too.
Yeah, it will.
Guy's all over all that stuff he put, to help us, so that's good.
Thank you, John.
Okay. Yeah, that's very exciting. Couldn't be happier. Good job. Thanks for all your hard work, Don.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to just echo that. It's such an amazing thing that you guys have done to kickstart this great project and have the vision to do it. And it's really exemplary. So thanks to everyone.
We've been doing it for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, well, COVID happened. City couldn't do it for a while. So I'm really glad that we can collaborate. Thank you.
I would wait for 4 years if I had $1.5 million on the other end of it.
I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to thank Toby for once again stepping up and just bringing the dollars home. I think that's great. Thanks, Toby.
And everyone involved. Okay, anything else?
Yeah, everyone involved. Yeah, everyone.
Okay, so we're moving on to 8B. This was added. This was the clampers discussion about the sign above the port. We had our presentation. They did come to the port last year and it didn't shake out because the wordage, like we just wanted to make sure the wordage was right because it is Port Orford history and the world's changed in the last 20 years. So we just definitely wanted to make sure and get that wordage right from that angle. He did say Rick Cook has looked over the wordage, who is the president of the historical committee. So that helps, but we want to make sure and do our due diligence on this one. So.
Yeah, I'd actually like to have it go. I mean, I think it would be great if we could get a recommendation from the Historic Preservation Committee, because that's what we have them for, because just for what you said of how we talk about history right now is something that, it just would be beneficial possibly to get their input for it. It has been something that has been a controversy.
I wonder if we could go ahead and approve it so they could start with their plans.
I think what you need to do, you need to send it to the Historic Society or have them look it over, and then planning, because it's going to be on public property. It's got to be done right. And I would also just let everybody kind of know that the language that is going to be etched in stone is basically coming from a piece of plywood that was painted and screwed to the side of a building at the port. Now, I'm not saying that's not inaccurate, or that it is inaccurate, but that's what it is. And so I think maybe, I don't know what Rick's relying on for his interpretation of accuracies, but it is a sensitive issue in our today's world. It really is, and we learned that when that was sent. Well, one of the gentlemen involved at the port project contacted a member of the Historic Society, and basically that person was very rude, said, "How'd you get my number?" and don't call back, and hung up the phone. So that's how it was reported to me. So there's tension out there, and that's all I got. I'm just saying there's for real tension out there. It showed in the process at the port, which ultimately was, ultimately caused the abandonment of the project. So to think that this isn't a big thing, we really have to be careful with the words that we chisel in stone. That's all. Thank you.
Give me a motion.
I move to send the Clampers project to the Historical Society for accuracy, and to planning for recommendations as far as the location goes.
Okay. Do I have a second on that? Okay, so that motion dies for lack of a second.
For just a little discussion, I would, if we don't want them to do it, then we can just say, no, we don't want them to do it. But if we want them to do it, then they need to at least know that we're agreeing to it. We're just going to find out more about the verbiage, and when so that I'm just thinking so they can make the reservations and.
I don't feel comfortable
Right.
making that decision tonight because this wasn't even on any posted agenda. There was no map of where it was going. There was no language for the rest of the community to see. So I don't think it would be appropriate for us to say, oh, yes, we agree with this tonight before we make it a public thing. And that's,
This is basically
because it
what
does
happened
have
at the port here.
to be controversial. And so anyway.
It is the verbiage is controversial, or the project?
I think the verbiage could have potential to be controversial, and so could the placement. So I feel like open it up to hear from the community, and maybe it won't be, but I just feel like I would not vote to do it tonight, is my feeling. I mean, we could say by consensus, or I'd feel comfortable maybe by consensus saying maybe they should go to the process that Brett identified. I think is a good one, but I think we also, it may be better to add the first, well, I don't know when that public step should come in. Maybe we send it in that direction, and then people would have the opportunity to comment.
And maybe put it on the
If
agenda.
we send it, it sort of signals if you send it to commissions, it does signal to the clampers that there is interest, and this is just like almost a repeat exactly what happened at the port. There's a process. It takes time, and it's frustrating at times how government moves slow, but that's the process that should occur, in my opinion. So I would make that motion again and ask for a second so that we can move forward with it.
I have a comment.
Okay, motion on the table. And then I'll get to your comment.
Yeah.
I'll second Brett's motion.
Okay, so now we can talk about it. Go ahead, Tim.
Okay, so my comment pretty much echoes Ann's, although I think I might support this project. I think we need to do better as a council to our additions to the agenda after our initial packet comes out on Fridays. I think these additions cause issues every time we have them, and I think we need to get back to getting our packet on Friday, having plenty of time to look that packet over and do business. I think it'll make our council run a lot smoother. That's my comments.
I agree, Tim. That was on me because we're a little light staffed. So I got that to Joseph on Friday and it didn't get out because he went on vacation. So that's all on me. I apologize and it won't happen again. I just didn't think it would be a decision. I thought it was just going to be the presentation tonight because of the past experience. So I apologize.
No apology needed. I just wanted to bring that up again, and I appreciate you guys listening to me. Thank you.
Yeah, that was on me because I didn't see a decision coming out of it. But because of the port, I knew I kind of thought that there would be a few, it wouldn't get decided tonight. But
Well, and it's possible maybe that it would take, until the follow to 25, but if we get it all approved,
if they have till May,
yeah.
so
So
we
if
got
it doesn't
February,
work, we
March,
might.
April. I mean,
get
the
it at least-
timeline is still kind of doable if it gets to the historical. Like if we decide that it's going to go to the historical society and planning, it seems like if we get it in there
If in
next
January we make the call,
Yeah.
maybe they could, yeah.
I also think, I wish I had asked this question when we were there about like the actual size, like are all, the size of what it's going to be, how big it's going
He
to be.
said it was going to be like,
Yeah.
sounded
Yeah,
like.
low grown
Okay.
profile because that was one of the things when they said I was like you're gonna get questions on the wordage and if you block the view of the ocean at all that's gonna be a huge issue.
Yeah.
So
But it would be good to, instead of having him say this tall, to have like an actual written description because, that's kind of the planning question. How big is it going to be? Where's it going to be? What's the drainage going to be? The current tile project up there does not drain properly, creates kind of a problem. So there's really specific questions to deal with.
okay, any other discussion on that motion? Okay, I will call for the vote to move this to the historical committee and planning for review and recommendation. Councillor Pogwitz,
Tim, yes.
Councillor Webb,
Yes.
Councillor Burns,
Burns, yes.
Councillor Velisis,
Lysis, no.
and Councillor Rask.
Yes.
Okay, so we will put that to the historical committee for review and planning for all the other stipulations. What did I move to 8C? What is that word?
Interim judge.
Cora Rose.
Oh, okay, good. And Dan touched on this earlier. We're lucky that Gary still wants to stay on, but in order to make his substitute, Miss Rose, valid, that we have to do a resolution.
And I'll
Yeah.
move to appoint Cora Rose as municipal court judge pro tem,
Hold on.
city of Port Orford.
Second.
Okay, and I think that you could I think you can do that by moving to approve resolution 2023-33, appointing Cora Rose as Port Orford Municipal Court Judge Pro Tem. Sorry, on the second page of what
Oh,
Dan did.
so moved.
Oh, that's even better. Okay, can I get a second on that?
Harry did it.
Second.
Okay,
Second.
any discussion? Okay, I'm going to call for the vote on that then. Councillor Rask,
Yes.
Councillor Velisis,
Yes.
Councillor Burns,
Yes.
Councillor Pogwitz,
Tim, yes.
Councillor Webb.
Webb, no.
Okay, and that was seconded by Perry, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and then we are going to go to 8D, and that is an update on the fire meeting and the burn to learn we had last month as well as moving forward in the future. So I will pass that right on over to you, Gary. Thank you for going to that meeting.
Yeah. So the idea would be that if somebody wanted their house burned down, they would come to the city and get the form. The first thing they'd be going to the fire chief to make sure that he approved the whole concept. And then they just go through these, it would come to the city. They pay whatever amount of money we decide on for the water used. We decide to do that. I think David thought it was around 1,500 gallons. So 1,500, 2,500 gallons would be what would be used. I couldn't think of any other fees or anything that we would add to that, but there could be. And then it would just go through our public works and law enforcement, and then it would not be on the fire department to vet everything. It'd be on the city. It's really a benefit to the community to have these trainings because we don't really have that many fires, and a lot of times we have new firefighters, and to be in the gear and there with the flames, there's just a lot to gain. The engineers are working the pumps and in air packs and communicating, and there's just a lot of benefits that compared to just having a regular training. So I think there's a lot to be gained by allowing these. There was something that only one was allowed per year, but I couldn't find anything where that was.
No, it's in the burn ordinance.
It's in the burn.
Yeah, yeah. Why?
Yeah,
How
so
did we end on us vetting it? Like they're the fire department. They get mad. They are the ones that go
They
check.
just don't have anybody to do it.
They check for burn permits, though. I mean,
So-
like we pay them a good amount of money for fire service every year, and this is part of fire service. So why would any burden be put on the city for a fire process?
Well, one thing that could be a benefit, like you have on here the quantity of water used, is that I think we should charge the landowner for the water, right? Don't you think?
Right.
Right. So,
Absolutely.
and that
Absolutely.
gives us the authority to make sure, and I think that that's probably why you did the ordinance in the first place, Brett White, because they weren't doing what we needed them to do.
No, it was, I could go on and on about it. I think we've reached a happy medium with this, where we're at right now. I'd hate to see the ordinance changed, honestly. This application is a great start. I think it could use a little fine tuning. I would remove any names from the header there. I don't imagine we want to change this document anytime when new chief should come along. So we would want to remove David Duncan's name. The fee, $100 fee, seems completely inadequate to me.
I just
Especially because oftentimes, yeah. No, I know, Gary. I think it's important to recognize that oftentimes these burns and learns are used as ways to mitigate costs for development. And we need to have our eyes wide open. That's what it is. And if you look, you'll see that. You'll see where the pharmacy is development. And you'll see where this latest burn occurs, that will be developed. So the idea that it's not part of development would be, pretty short-sighted. So keep it in mind, it's a moneymaker, and we need to get ours. And the DEQ approval should be one of these bullet points. Gary, there should be DEQ approval. I would suggest that the burn date be a proposed burn date at the top line. And then we need to be, I would suggest that somewhere in here it clarifies who is the responsible party for, if the thing gets out of control, if, a neighbor, somebody has property damage, who is the responsible party? Because when I read this, it almost makes, I think it almost puts the city being responsible, because we would be the ones who are deeming it appropriate and safe. And you see what I mean? So, and to Pat's point about the city shouldering the cost, the district is much larger than the city. And the service that they provide, while fabulous, again, it doesn't just happen in the city. So there's persons living outside of the city limits who would be enjoying the benefit of that without carrying any of the load, which would seem unfair. Um, I think it's great to get this application. I don't know that did we not have one before? There was supposed to be one before. Do we not have one? Did you use a template of some sort, Gary, or?
Oh, I just made this up.
You really
did?
hit on the question that I want answered though, Brett, is if we have this form, are we accepting liability for this learn to burn?
It
Like
sure
we're
seems like it to me.
learn to burn.
We're sanctioning it.
We're the DEQ. We're the ones like making sure that like we're accepting the liability for someone else's burn to learn that we're paying for services for, in a way.
Shayla?
Why doesn't the fire department check these boxes when they go through
Well,
their
that's been
process?
the problem.
Yeah.
I would like to know that answer too, Shayla.
I
We
mean,
wouldn't be here right now.
they have the experience to know whether or not there's asbestos or if there's a DEQ issue or something like that. I mean, does anybody at the city have the experience or knowledge to be able to even check those boxes?
Yep. And DEQ
I
needs
would
to look at it.
be is that the fire department would create a form like this, and then they would come to the city council with their completed form for approval.
See, and
I like
that's
that.
what sounds, because the problem
I
is
like
they
that.
aren't doing those things. They aren't notifying the neighbors or whatever. That's what we've heard.
I was just trying to keep what happened to not happen again.
Yeah.
But when
No,
they
you're
when they
doing great,
brought
Gary.
it, then I mean we would do a public meeting and approve it or not approve it, at which point there would be input and the neighbors would know, if provided they of course pay attention to what's happening in the city. And so there would be that layer of public outreach at the council level if the fire department did not do that. But I think that a form like this is something that I think that the fire department needs to fill out and bring to the city.
And then, but what if they're not willing to do that? I mean, that's what was
Which
the,
Then
that
there are
was
no burn to learns.
Yeah.
And
so we can just say there aren't any more burn to learns.
well, what does your ordinance say? Doesn't your
it says you
ordinance?
have to come and get permission and you need
Right.
DEQ approval,
Right.
and they didn't get
But
permission.
the DEQ and found out there is no DEQ.
There is no DEQ approval. What basically, and Brett, I want to, yeah, the DEQ approval part is not quite right in our ordinance. What we really need to ask for is proof of asbestos removal. And DEQ only requires, they don't, basically learn to burns are exempt from DEQ requirements, except for they are required to get a survey, a certified asbestos survey that proves it's been removed. But they don't have to have it turned into them or anything. They just require that. So if there's a problem, so I think like this form, if we go with the form, we should require a copy of that,
So
Yeah.
your burn
Yes,
to
that
learn
makes sense.
has a DEQ or council approval not to exceed one event per year per applicant. Applicants probably
Yeah.
interpret it to mean property owner, I would think, not one burn.
I think the applicant was the fire department because that was the only one who could apply for a burn to learn. Shayla, it may be confusing the language there, but I couldn't apply for a burn to learn because I'm not a fireman. You know what I mean? But that should be clarified. And
Yeah,
I don't
that does
know.
clarification, especially if you're going to ultimately make the property owner the responsible party. Seems to me the property owner is the applicant.
So maybe we're on to something. Maybe, I mean, it sounds like the ball is kind of in the rural fire district's court. Like if you want to do burn to learns, come back to us with an adequate form, then we'll accept the form and then we'll go about our business. We're not going to say, no, you can't do burn to learns. Just we need this form. We need more clarification before we do it again.
but then we know we don't have, we have to make sure they do come to us. And so if we don't require them to come to us,
Your ordinance requires it.
yeah, but I
Yeah,
thought
we have a
that was,
contract right now that with them, we have an ordinance and it still didn't get followed. So I don't know what one more piece of paper is going, you know what I mean? Like the ball has already been dropped and so
I think we need to
way to circle
create a
back
fine.
until we get
We need to create a fine that that works.
Go ahead.
I don't know what our fine is, but it should be $10,000 or $20,000. You can't have a $700 fine on something where somebody's saving $30,000 from a dump fee. You know, I mean, it's just this is all numbers, it's all math, and the fine should be
Responsible
relevant to the. I think the property
talking
owner,
about
because
fine he's talking about. He's saying you
you
can't have a
can't make
$7
the government.
fine.
But who's paying the fine? The
The
fire department?
No, the applicant, property owner.
Well, except if they don't apply,
But the fire department is choosing to burn, they burn,
Right.
and
Should be both.
and it's so
Yeah.
why is the property owner the
Well, because they're taking the risk. But I will say from when I talked to DEQ about this, because they have had problems like what Brett said of people basically burning a bunch of crap and saying it's a burn to learn and having hazardous stuff in there. And that it is a multiple, like that they've, in the legal cases that they were talking about, they said it was multiple parties were liable, the fire department and the applicant. But if we're trying to make our thing clean, to me, it does make sense to make it the applicant taking the risk. Because it's hard for us to be in the position of fining our fire department. I mean,
Well, I know that hardly makes sense, but
yeah, we can't really.
but like I say, if there's no application, there's no applicant.
Can I ask?
But at the end of the day,
Can I ask if anything
end of
moved? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead,
No,
Tim.
go ahead, Brett. At the end of the day,
I just had a clip.
go ahead, Brett.
Go ahead, Tim. Tim, go.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. So I was just wondering.
At
if,
the end of the day,
hilarious.
Okay.
Go
Brett,
ahead,
have
man.
a
I ain't
delay,
saying
Brett.
nothing.
Brett,
I'm
go.
not saying nothing. No, forget it. I ain't talking.
Okay, Tim, back to you.
Hey, okay. Hey, sorry, Brett. We have a delay, and I think we keep jumping over each other. I apologize. So at the end of the day, we have hired the rural fire department to be the fire department for our district, the city of Port Orford. So therefore, if the fire department starts a burn to learn on a person's property, it's my opinion, and I'm not an attorney, the property owner's going to get sued, the city's going to get sued, and the fire department's going to get sued if that fire jumps onto the neighbor's property. The biggest complaint from our citizens is that they aren't getting noticed. They would like to get noticed so they can maybe plan to be away that day. Maybe smoke is very irritable to them. So we need to make sure that these things are noticed. And I believe Brett is right. When we created this, I believe the fire department was the applicant. Now, where it goes from here, I don't know. I think we do need to change some things and get them shored up because it probably should fall on the property owner.
Right, and
That's
then just because it doesn't, an applicant, just because you're the applicant doesn't mean you're not responsible. You know what I mean? Or I think that the fire department could be the applicant, but ultimately the property owner is responsible. I know if the fire department showed up here and started trying to burn my house down, I'd be out there with the hose and I'd be calling fire department from somewhere else. I'd be, I mean, you're obviously going along with it. So, I just, what I saw with this last one was the epitome of the. It was an example of why we need to be on top of this. We need to be vigilant. My question is has the city followed up with the fire board as far as what they're going to do with with that offense, that violation of the ordinance that was carried out by their chief. Did they say it's not going to happen again? Did they the reprimand? Is there anything going on? There has to something's got to happen.
Well, I think even Dave agreed that it was, it didn't work out very well. And the board definitely felt that, but the board really at that meeting wasn't prepared to come up with any direction.
Were they prepared
I
to
came
direct their chief?
with this permit thinking that, just to see where they were at. They, there's no paid employees on the fire department. So as far as
Well, I think
they,
that's debatable, but go ahead. Yeah.
What type of due diligence does the fire department do in a burn to learn? What type of,
they did very little.
Therein lies the
The
problem.
asbestos was removed, and that was about it.
According to who? According to who?
The asbestos siding was
I mean,
removed. I can attest to that.
that roof was a foot thick.
But see, but that's the thing. There's the asbestos, but there's the fact that people had the house next door to them burning down and they didn't know about it. I ran across the 2 blocks because I thought there was a house on fire. And so it's just every step of the way there was flaws. And that's why we can't expect the right thing to happen. And that's why there is merit in a document like this. But I don't think the city has to touch it. It's not, we pay people to do this stuff. But that's just my opinion.
Well, I think the thing about the water is one of the things I also really want to make sure we pick up, because if that had happened a day when our water had been running and our levels were low,
Mhm.
that would have been a real problem for our citizens too, or if another fire had happened. And
Well, and that's why notice should be part of this form of you need no, a week's notice or 2 weeks notice to people. And if you know it's a burn and learn, it's not an emergency. You can go put our meter on a hydrant and know exactly how much water you are. And 1,500 gallons is going to be like $40. So it's not like the big revenue maker that we're thinking, but it's still a penny is a penny, and we don't want to give uh, anything away free. But there's also fire practice too. Like I'm not saying the water's not important, but and I have a hard time believing that only 1,500 gallons. But I mean, that's not very much. I'm not. And actually, I know I'm not conflicting with anyone, but I know that there was I know how far the tank dropped that night because I asked, and it was substantially more than 1,500 gallons. Obviously, there was a lot of other stuff going on in town, and I can't say that it was, but that's a pretty low number.
I would hope that the fire department after this has undertaken to clean up their application process and has some waivers and some insurance language and things like that on their application form. And it would be my recommendation that the fire department, once they've gone through their form with the applicant, brings it to the city so the city can sign off on it, at which point you can charge a fee to use the water. But I don't necessarily think it should be a city created form. It should be the fire department that brings their form with all their boxes checked to the city for the final check mark that says, yes, you can do this on such and such date, and here's your bill for the water.
Shayla, what do you think about just keeping our existing ordinance about saying they have to come?
I think your ordinance is fine. I think your ordinance is broad enough to allow that
But
process.
it didn't work at all.
No, it didn't, and I don't know why it didn't this time around. I mean, it
And I don't know
should.
why it would be any different the next time.
Well, you do have a clause in your ordinance that allows for $1,000 fine.
But it doesn't say.
That's how you fix this. You add a couple zeros to that $1,000.
We'll court and see what
You
happens.
fix it with money.
What did Brett say?
So Shayla said she put it to, so if what would the process be to do that, Shayla?
You would send them a letter that included a citation of a violation of your ordinance, like a code enforcement issue, and say that, here's your fine. And if they don't respond in some fashion, then you could actually cite them and have them brought in. It just depends on how far you wish to take it.
Who
Your
would we be
ordinance,
citing? The fire department or the landowner?
well, your ordinance is not clear, but to me, it's actually the fire department who approved this burn to learn. It's not as if the property owner went and set his house on fire and waited for the,
Dave said that Dave Bassett said that he'd come to the city 3 times, and he came to the city 3 times while we were in turmoil. So nobody knew what he needed to do, and so Dave just cowboyed it, Dave Duncan, and I kind of feel it's not something. There's too much for me to go to the board and try to make anything happen. I feel it might be best to have somebody, either the whole fire board or somebody, Mari or somebody on the fire board, to come to the council and to work it out that way, because I don't see, I'm not going to go to their, having gone there and sat in their board meeting, I feel the whole council has to do the next step.
well, I'm not real sure why they would oppose having an application process being brought to the
Who
city.
on their board is going to do it?
Well, we have a,
They have attorneys. They
I'm
have
just
yeah,
people
I
who
mean,
do
saying,
this stuff.
they're
I
a
mean,
member of a
we pay
special
them
district.
$75,000 a year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
I would assume that they would have the access to the special district attorneys of Oregon. I assume that they would be a member of that, and that is the point of being a member of that, is to have legal counsel assistance.
well, and you'd think the burn to learn process, there would be a canned boiler template of these are the hoops that you have to
You would
jump
think.
through.
Well,
Because
and the
as far
ordinance-
as I know, the fire board was not aware of this burn to learn. We weren't aware of it. The fire board wasn't aware of it. No one was aware of it. Therein lies the problem. If you're not aware of something, you can't address it. And that's the problem is things are being disregarded. If the ordinance wasn't disregarded, you can't sit here and tell me that nobody knew about it, because all the players involved knew about it. And we have to put it back on them because we have the egg on our face. We're the ones that have the liability of it. It doesn't matter what the paper says. If something went wrong, we're going to get sued for it. So I don't want to be like, it's the fire department. They are volunteers. We don't want to do anything against the fire department, but we have to do our due diligence too. And I'm kind of landing on, if you want to do burn to learns, give us a valid application for it that we can accept and as a council, and then move on. And I don't know if
I don't
there's,
think that's asking too much.
I don't think so either. I mean, that's like, we want to work with you. We just want to cover our liability basis, which you do too. So let's do this and move on. So I would entertain a motion to go back to Port Orford Rural Fire District and ask them to come up with a burn to learn application so that we can continue doing burn to learns in the city limits.
And then how exactly will we do that?
Well, if somebody makes that motion and we get it voted, I'll write them a letter.
I
It's
think we
pretty
also
cut and
need
dry.
to do, our ordinance needs to state what the fine is when you violate it.
It's 1,000, up to 1,000.
Sorry?
It just says $1,000, I think.
Oh, it does?
But it doesn't say who pays that.
But is that the problem, as I see it, was not that we weren't compensated as much as there was no public notice and it wasn't done correctly. And we don't know if it was done safe. Now, I'm not shirking at the money, and we do need to address the ordinance. But as far as this application and going back to the fire department for this,
It's going to need to get called out in your letter, exactly what you want them to do. They're not going to just go out.
why not though? We pay them $75,000 a year. They are with
They
the
are.
SDIS, and they're a fire department.
I'm
They
just
should
saying,
be
if
able
you
to.
don't tell them exactly what they need to do,
Well, they'll come up with an application. We'll look at it, and then go, if it's not adequate, I hear what you're saying, and we will prep them as much as possible, but I doubt that it'll come to council and without a little bit of, uh, back and forth on it, or there's always one more
So it
box
seems
to check.
like there's two pieces here. There's the violation and fine. Do we want to move? I thought we decided we did want to move forward with that. And it may not be about the money. Would it create bad feeling? The reason we want to move forward with it, I think, is to say, look, we don't want this to happen again.
Right, and the
We want
direction
this-
received last month was to
that.
do that to the
Yes.
property owner.
Okay.
So that is the path that is going forward, but now I'm hearing that it might not supposedly supposed to go to the property owner.
Yeah.
Because of our ordinance.
Well, your ordinance also says that, this is the language, the one with the permit and or property owner is hereby responsible for maintaining a safe, controlled, permitted burn and is solely responsible for injuries and or damages resulting from the failure to do so. So who is the permit holder?
You would need a permit. to
There's
be a
no permit.
holder.
Right.
Right, and so we don't have a permit holder, so perhaps it is the property owner who is responsible in this case.
But
And then the property owner is then going to turn around and look at the fire department and say, you said I could.
and the property owner didn't light it off.
Right.
Fire department lights it off. In the end, it comes down to the fire chief made that call and did what happened. And I don't exactly know how that's going to, change so we don't have it happen again.
Well, I think that we now see the faults in the process. And so I think that we work with them to create a cleaner process going forward. We can't undo what has been done, but we certainly can make sure it doesn't happen again with appropriate process and notices in place. I think that that's how you start the conversation.
So there's a couple of things that have to happen. We need to clean up our ordinance, like by making clear, although we still don't understand if it's the property owner or the fire department, although it seems like that should be the responsible party. And then we have to ask the fire department to do their part.
So can we just write a letter to the fire department and say, or do you need a motion saying that we want you to do this?
I mean, I get a quick consensus, I think, just the same on something like that. Can I write a letter to the fire board pertaining to these issues that we've been speaking on?
And ask
Tim,
them-
Brett, you good with that?
I'm okay with it. I think maybe you should cross off the city of Port Orford off what Gary prepared and give them that as a kind of a template to start with. This
Okay.
isn't everything, but this is a good template to start with. And that may help them.
Okay.
And we made a couple of suggestions were added that I think would be good to maybe add
I
in
have a
to
copy
that
of the
template.
asbestos report
And proposed burn
and the
date.
proposed burn date.
Maybe say name of the property owner / responsible party, or I don't know, that responsible party idea.
Yeah, that has to be logicked out because to me, $1,000 fine isn't really that much money.
Yeah.
I mean, but we really need to know who's going to pay that. But it should be $10,000. I mean, it's a big violation to the community.
Yeah, and it's like what Brett said, if somebody's using it to not have to pay hauling
Right.
fees, of course they're gonna.
But
Okay,
I
$1,000.
can still see where the property owner could say, well, the fire department came and did it. And the property owner didn't tell David Duncan how to burn it or have anything. I mean, David Bassett was there, but he had no control of the firefighters. He has no control at all.
But anybody
Property
who
owner.
does anything, like we don't know, none of us know all the laws off the top of our head. If we're gonna do something, we have to look it up and we have to follow the law. You kind of can't say, oh, I didn't know what the law was. I mean, you could say that, but it's kind of your responsibility if you're gonna do something that serious, right? The property owner, I mean, I would think.
I would just see the property owner would see it as an opportunity to have their place burned down. They go through, whatever process to have that done if it's possible. And if it's not possible, they haul it off.
But ultimately, the city, going forward, the city should be the one who gets the final sign off. And the city is not going to sign off unless this application process is done. And so going forward, I think that you will find that there's more, there's more willingness on the fire department's part to put this in place. I mean, if I was them, I would want this in place for their own liability purposes.
I think so too. And I mean, we have been told in open council that the fire department's going to do what they want. Not this practice burn, but the one before, we were told we're going to do what they want. So this is not this is not a new thing. This is not something that people weren't aware of. This is not something that people were not aware of. So we just need to get the checklist, and hopefully this will be the wake up call to where it won't happen again. But
And do you think it's something to think about to decide on later if we want to make the fine $10,000?
I think there's two different situations. I think the main objective when we started was to how are we not going to have a burn to learn happen again without proper notice and making sure everything was okay. In that conversation, we found out that maybe our ordinance isn't right and we need to work on that. I think they're two separate things. I think this is on the fire department side of the street, come back to us with an application, and then the ordinance is on us to bring back up, and
Okay.
two separate pots. So
somewhere down the road, we can bring up the ordinance.
right. And it might, we might want to drag our feet a little bit till we do get this application, so that like, oh, this is pretty bulletproof. Yeah, we should definitely do 10 grand if they disregard this or but I do think that they're separate. So as of right now, consensus is to write this letter to the fire department. I'll blind copy all of you on it so that you can't reply. And we'll move on to item.
And there was something else that was that I wasn't aware of, and I don't know if anybody else is. When somebody outside of the city limits puts in a septic tank, the septic tank has to be filled with water that comes from the city, and that happens whenever it happens. So
Why does it have to come from the city?
The water is being taken from the city outside the city to use for these septic tanks.
Right.
That's what's going on right now.
So basically, the fire department is getting free water to fill up people outside the city's septic tanks. So that's something we need to nip in the bud
So
too.
you mean they're not coming and applying and getting money or asking John Isidore and paying for it. They're just coming and taking water from using the fire department trucks?
I think they may do a donation to the fire department.
Yes.
Okay.
They do a donation to the fire department. It's traditionally how it was, is when you had a bad well or stuff along those lines, the fire department would come and fill up your water tank. They got away from it, like, I want to say 10, so it was probably 20 years ago, it's non-potable. We don't want to mess with that. We don't want to touch it. So it went away. But that traditionally was a donation to the fire department would get you water that was from the city. And it's tied in with the blow off and all of that stuff. But that is a whole different animal that'll just be part of the letter. I don't see any.
And then the burn to learns that would be in the county that they would use our water for that training would be another. I mean, I hate to stir all this up, but these are all things that are.
Well, but it's because like you can justify a lot of the water usage for training and the backwashing and the fact that exercising those hydrants and blowing off those hydrants, it's a benefit to the city. But I don't want to spend a single penny. It's just the principle of it. So
Well, and also our water situation is different now than it was in the past, which is we do have times when if the tank is down, because of circumstances that we really can't have people going and just randomly taking a bunch of water,
yeah, but it's
Maybe
just,
it's a little bit.
proportionally it's not that much, but principally it's, because even just turning a hydrant on and off for regular stuff, you're going to burn probably a couple 100 gallons through the weep holes. So, but either way, I will mention that as well. Gary. Thank you for that tidbit. Do not fill septic tanks outside of city. Anything else on that? Okay, then we're going to move on to continuing action items. Is there anything we need to bring back? We covered the extension on the job applications. Okay, nothing pressing that I don't think we will not forget before the next meeting. Okay, so moving on to considerations, citizen considerations. Come on
I have
up, bro.
something to say.
I'll get to you next, caller 3.
So I've heard a lot of talk about accountability.
Could you state your name and address, please?
Roan Stetson, 1895 Washington Street. I've heard a lot of talk about accountability, especially with the fire department, but I've still heard no talk about accountability with the police department. Last meeting it was, Andrew Perry was called out
Sir,
again.
I can't have you speaking out on employees, please. As far as naming employees, I cannot have you do that.
You had a gentleman that was called out for falsifying documents and also falsifying.
Sir, I'm sorry, but I cannot let you talk about individuals.
We're talking about accountability,
Okay.
and that's with your staff.
Well, you can talk about accountability, sir. I just can't have you
Accountability
singling
with the
out
police
employees.
force on actually filing correct documents and not falsifying information. Because that was called out last meeting as well by 2 city employees. And that's the second time in just a few months. And it seems to be the same person that comes up every single time. But the accountability is not talked about for the police. It's only talked about for the fire department. It's not talked about for city staff who drove the HVAC truck without a CDL license. I'll let you resonate on that. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Okay, I believe caller number 3.
Yeah. Teresa Colababa, 611 Jackson Street. Dave
Yes.
Duncan did know that people were supposed to be notified because when I came down off the roof, I went over there and said, aren't you supposed to notify people before you set things on fire? And he said someone was supposed to notify people, but he wouldn't say who the someone was. And I asked several people in the neighborhood if they were notified. Greg Tidy said no. There's a guy who lived next door to him, John. He said no. I asked Barbecue Bob, who's got that auto spot across from the post office. He said Dave told him. I asked at the post office. No. Dave's Barbecue Bob is the only one who was notified about that fire. And also, I was talking to Mari Lacas about it. She said Dave doesn't like to follow regulations. And so he needs to learn that regulations there's a reason for them, and that he's responsible to follow the regulations and have a checklist of things he's supposed to do. That's it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online with citizen consideration? Any counselor considerations? Okay then, Mayor, thank you guys. It's been a heck of a year. We did get some stuff checked off the list. It sure doesn't feel like it. Maybe next year it'll be better, but I said that last year too, so I'm not going to. We won't hold our breath. We'll just keep doing what we're doing. All you guys are working really hard. I appreciate the extra effort. And thank you all. Thank you, citizens, for showing up. Yeah, thanks for everything. It's fun.
Thank you, Mayor Pat, for everything you're doing in your leadership too.
All righty. So, wow, 7:26. Let's get out of here.
Wow. Jesus.
Shayla, thank you so much. I really
Hey.
appreciate everything you did.
No problem. I'll be watching you from
All
afar.
right, I can sign.
I'll try not to come to your meetings.
You're gonna come
And
out.
be an irate citizen.
You can eat popcorn at
Now
home
I-
like all the other people, the rest of the peanut gallery is.
Now I can say all the things I always wanted to say. I won't do.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Same to you.
Safe trip.